The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Here.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderwoman Boyd. 22 present. You have quorum.
A quorum being present, I'll ask everyone in the chambers and the galleries is able to stand and please rise for prayer. Before we begin the prayer today, I'm going to ask everyone to please join me in a moment of silence for Father Richard Wassman, who was the good friend of Alderman Vollmer and his first cousin. He was president of Vianney High School, graduate of St. Mary's, and has worked throughout the community to help people in need. Also, a young officer, Caitlin Alex, who's only 24 years old and had just been with the department for just under a year. And also, Vel Marie King, she was the committee woman from the 6th Ward. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. Alderwoman from the 1st. Alderwoman from the 1st, you recognize. We're going to suspend our regular business to take up our courtesy resolutions calendar. Alderwoman from the 1st, you have
I don't know if it's
an introduction from the floor.
not on the desk right now. I'm going to suspend the rules. Can I do it while he's passing it out?
Yes, I don't think
I don't know
anybody.
what the number is. What's the number? Thank you. 235. Mr. President, members of the board, I move to suspend the rules so I can introduce a courtesy resolution number 235, which is being put on the desk as we speak, and it is just a courtesy resolution pertaining to Terry Nelson, who died at the beginning of January and was the head of the Carpenters District Council.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 1st that we suspend our rules for the
Sam,
purposes of
give me a
the introduction. It's been seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green, Alderman Odenberg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Muhammad, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvy, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Navarro, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley, Alderman Vollmer, Alderwoman Martin, Alderman Odenberg, Alderman Rhodey, Alderwoman Davis, Alderwoman Spencer, 21 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion, Alderwoman from the 1st, and suspended the rules for the purposes of placing the aforementioned resolution at the tail end of the courtesy resolutions calendar. Madam Clerk, please make note.
So noted.
Alderman from the 18th. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the courtesy resolutions calendar. Alderman from the 18th, the motion for the courtesy resolution calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the courtesy resolution calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Alderman from the 25th, would you like to approach the dais?
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's my esteemed pleasure to be here this morning with a few of my friends. I've known these folks for many years now and have had some wonderful shared experiences in life together. This morning, they're here with us all to commemorate the 5-year anniversary of Boom Magazine. Boom Magazine is a LGBT online publication that promotes the local LGBT community and also advocates for LGBT equality at the local, state, and federal levels. They have now been in business for 5 years, and so I thought, along with President Reed, that it's very important to commemorate not only their 5 years in business here in St. Louis, but also the wonderful contributions that they've made to the LGBT community and to the St. Louis community at whole. I'm not going to go through the whereas clauses on the resolution, but I do want to thank Colin, and Kurt for their many wonderful contributions to the city of St. Louis and the region and the state of Missouri. And want to commemorate that and also wish them the best of luck in the future and hopefully the many years to come. I do want to say that I think that this is also a momentous occasion because as an organization that advocates for LGBT equality, the city has always, well, I should say not always, but at least in the last several years been at the forefront of advocating for LGBT rights. And in recent times has really tried to push the state, and in some cases the federal governments to do what's right by the LGBTQIA community. And I'm actually, standing here today realizing that I think for the first time in the history of the city, we actually have 3 openly LGBTQIA candidates running for alderman. And as the first openly gay alderman in elected office in the city of St. Louis, it's actually quite momentous. I've been here for almost 10 years now, and it's the first time that we've had that many openly LGBTQ family members running for public office. And I think that it's a really wonderful testament to the city in terms of our advocacy and leadership in the region and the state, that we have so many folks. I think it's also a testament to the times that we're living in. the LGBT community is, still under attack, still being used as a wedge issue, particularly by those on the, conservative right. And I think that, it's important for folks to have a seat at the table. Jolie Justice, former state senator, city council member in Kansas City, candidate for mayor of the Kansas City, often says that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that that's a really important thing to think about, especially when we look around this chamber and the chambers, across the country of legislative bodies and the voices that aren't present in those chambers, and making sure that as elected representatives that we're thinking about all of those voices as well, and making sure that we're channeling those voices through our own, and making sure that action is being taken to advocate for those folks as well. So with that, I want to thank Colin, and Kurt again for their wonderful contributions to the city, and if we could all give them a round of applause for their 5 years in business, I'd really appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it over to President Reed for a few remarks.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? I also just want to thank Colin, and Kirk. That actually sounds like a good law firm. For not just what you've done to grow your publication, but what you do throughout the community and informing people and keeping people apprised on the issues. If people have correct information and good information, they have a better opportunity to make the right decisions. This nation made some tremendous headway through gay marriage, right? But now, all these rights and things that we have, we can't assume that they're just going to stick around, especially under the current leadership that's in D.C. today, right? So it requires a constant fight. So I want to thank all of you for the work that you've done, and also my friend Alderman Shane Cohn for the work that he's done in informing and educating people throughout this city. I think about my family and my kids, and my daughter has benefited from that education, right? So I appreciate it. This resolution is the highest honor the board has to give any organization or individual. But what it does, it cements in time some of your many contributions up until this point. So 100, 200 years from now, when people research the records of the city, they will read about Boom Magazine, and they will read about Colin, and Kirk, and they will read about how you all were part of paving the road so that there's fairness and equity all across this nation. So I appreciate it and thank you on behalf of residents of the city of St. Louis and people from around the country that follow you who aren't able to thank you personally. So let's give them another big round of applause.
For a media organization, they're actually declining comment this morning. I think they're overwhelmed by the honor and distinguished honor of being down here this morning. So thank you again to the three of you, and I wish you all the best in the years ahead.
Hi, I'm Colin Murphy. I'm editor of Boom. I just really want to thank this body. I just ran across an article from 1992 about Mayor Shamel and President Vila passing the non-discrimination ordinance. And we still don't have those protections throughout the state of Missouri, but we do here in St. Louis. And I just on behalf of an entity that covers the community, sorry, I'm a little nervous, but thank you. Thank you for your leadership in making sure that St. Louis is a safe place for the LGBT community. So thank you very much.
Alderman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I could not be more excited this morning to welcome Roosevelt High School's football and soccer teams from the fall 2018 season. We started watching games in the heat of the summer and ended up for one of the first times in, keep scooting over, thank you. One of the first times in a long time wearing coats at the end of the season. So two gentlemen that are, I think, behind me, Coach Mark Ingram and Coach Trey Porter, have been instrumental in really making sure that Roosevelt is on the rise. The kids that are standing behind me have kept their grades up, have enjoyed some record-breaking sports playing in the city of St. Louis, and the soccer team won the Public High School League championship, as did the football team. We're talking about perseverance, tenacity, some amazing game playing, and some really awesome coaches. And so I just would like to recognize all the work that went into making this happen this year for these amazing young men and their even more incredible coaches. So if you could give them all a round of applause, and then I'd like the coaches to say a couple words.
Hello, I'm Mr. Mark Ingram. I'm coach for the boys soccer team at Roosevelt High School. It's my second year coaching. The first year we actually won the PHL championship, and this year we won the district championship, the first time in school history. So that was real big, and I teach history, so a historian making history is real cool. Best group of guys both years. I mean, great teams. They kind of came together as a team at the end of the season, and they just showed fight, spirit, and hope. So I just want them to continue that throughout their days. The idea of fighting, dreaming, and hoping. All right.
I'm Coach Trey Porter, head football coach, athletic director at Roosevelt High School. Second year as well. We started off last year 1-9. This year we was 8-3. We went ahead and won the PHL Conference Championship for the first time in 16 years, and we made it to the district semifinals for the first time in a long time. We merged two schools together with Cleveland ROTC and the Roosevelt High School, so we got kids from the Shaw neighborhood as well as Miss Christine's neighborhood as well. So we're turning it into a South Side type deal. We appreciate the Board of Aldermen for what you guys do and help us with our after-school programs, and the benefits of the summer is a lot of our kids are able to eat and come do extra credit assignments due to the funding that we get from some of you guys down here and your efforts with that. Overall, it was a great season. We got kids on our team, it's top of their class. We got a student with 4.25 GPA. We also have students who will be participating in the Nike Opening for the first time in PHL in like the last 12 years. We have kids that will be going on college visits for continuing playing college football this weekend and next. So we're just trying to turn the curve through all the things and triumphs and troubles that we may face through the St. Louis Public School District. We just continue to push through and appreciate the city's support, and especially our alderwomen and everything that everybody here does for the community, for the neighborhood, and for the kids.
Alderman from the 8th.
Hello, there we go. All right, thank you so much for being here. You guys are incredibly electric to watch. It was super fun to come to the Rough Riders games. Just hanging out in the grass, watching you all play, watching you do your thing was really exciting. Having the community have something to come out and support. The tailgates that the neighborhood association was helping out with the Rough Riders Association over there. Just really, really great having you all. Thank you so much. I represent the 8th Ward, so if you're in Shaw or in the part of Tower Grove East that's closer to Grand, I'm your alderman and very happy to have you. And congratulations so much on your success, both on the field and academically. You all are going to do amazing things, and thank you so much, coaches, for everything that you've done as well. Thanks.
Alderman from the 19th.
Good morning to you, gentlemen, okay? So I'm looking at all the faces that I know. I know that one young man probably said, why are you talking to me? But I don't forget a face ever. So I knew you from JVL. So what we're doing here today is honoring you, but I want you to get used to it. I want you to keep yourself in a position where you're looked up to, that you are doing your best for this world, okay? Because right now it's about the world. It's not just about your community. We've got too many strange things going on. So I want to applaud you for your achievements. I want you to also think about how you can come back and give to your community, volunteer whenever you can. That is important anytime any college is looking at you, what you are doing in your community. And so you come from a very strong high school, very strong. And I know that a lot of the teachers over there, they go out of their way, and I know they do for you. But I want you to also think about, some of you need to come back and be teachers too. So we have a strong teaching program in the state of Missouri, and we want you to think about that as well. But again, congratulations to you, and know and understand that everything you do, not everything somebody else does, but everything you do makes a difference. Thank you.
Alderman from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Again, I would like to congratulate everybody up there. I definitely know where the Roosevelt Rough Riders are located at. I spent many years watching football games on Saturdays up there at their fields. I think that you've achieved in sports and you're achieving in school, and just follow that path because it's very important, and I know you will be good. Give back to your community. Kids will be looking up to you as you grow older. You can be a great example for everybody, and also teach them the importance of school and sports. I can see now some of you will probably play in the NFL one day. I just want to let you know, come look me up, and I won't be as expensive as them other agents. Thank you.
That's right. Alderman from the 14th.
I'd like to congratulate, as a former educator, I'd like to congratulate these young men.
Principal. She was a principal. Keep going.
I was, and I worked at ROTC, so it's been a few years back, but I congratulate you, and I know how important extracurricular activities are in keeping you on your path with education. You must get at least a C average or better and to participate, so I applaud you in your efforts to keep your studies up, to stay active in productive activities, and to work towards your goals of getting your diploma and moving on in higher education or to a job. So congratulations, keep up the good work, and stay engaged.
Alderman from the 4th.
Congratulations, gentlemen. I'm a bulldog myself. I know you're rough riders. I know you're rough riders. But how many of you up there are hockey players, soccer players? Raise your hand if you're a soccer player. Well, St. Louis is looking for some soccer players, so so get ready to join the team. And I wish you all well. Okay. God bless you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Also just want to add my, thanks and also congratulations on a job well done to the coaches, but especially to all of these young people up here who have achieved some greatness already at this point in your lives. And the messaging that came from a lot of these aldermen today is understand that what you've achieved is some greatness today, and carry that forward and continue and stay on that path. Remember the things that your coaches taught you. You've learned to set a goal. You've learned to achieve that goal, and you've learned to stick to it, right? And to the coaches, I appreciate all the work that you all have done. I know that it's sometimes not easy, but it is certainly rewarding. So as a father of 4, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done. And as you've heard earlier, these resolutions and the honor that you all are receiving today, it places you in the permanent records of our city, right? So when you go and research our records, in the future, you will read about the achievements that these teams have made, and you will read about the fact that we paused in our deliberations to assure that you were properly recognized and that we committed these documents to our permanent records. Congratulations on a job well done, and keep up the good work. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Good work. And Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations, gentlemen. I move that Resolution 232 is embanked.
It's been moved by Alderman from 21st, seconded by Alderman from 12th, 13th, and 19th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please make note of that and have the Sergeant at Arms create 2 new resolutions in bank. Now, what that means is that every alderman wanted to add their names to your resolution so that it's unanimous. So you will have new resolutions printed with all the aldermen's names added to it. So, and that doesn't happen every day, as you may know. So that tells you something also. Congratulations on a job well done.
Guess we better do pictures up here, huh? Yeah. You want to go down here? Okay. So I guess we're just going to turn around.
That side, and we're going to line up on the steps. So the people that are down. been moved and seconded that we adopt our courtesy resolutions calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. With that, turn our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 13th.
Yes, President, members of the board, I'd like to have as my honored guest Jeff Hans, a representative from the Carpenters Regional Council. And I saw a moment ago the assessor, my constituent and friend, Mike Dolphin.
Alderman from the 14th.
Mr. President and esteemed colleagues, I'd like to have as my honored guests Demetrius Alfred and Nathan Lett from Firefighters Local 73 and Clinton McBride from Laborers Local 110.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President and esteemed colleagues. Good morning. I'd like to have as my honor guest Ms. Sunny Whiteside and my son here, William Bosley. All right, thank you.
Alderman from the 22nd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to have the esteemed Alderman from the 3rd Ward Mother as my special guest, Ms. Lucinda Frazier. And I would like to have Sheila Jones from Ameren, Missouri, and LaRoy Grant from AT&T.
Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to guest David Sweeney from Lewis Rice.
Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my honored guest Megan McBride from the Kelly Group and our city's Chief Technology Officer, Robert Gaskell Clements. Dr. Robert Gaskell Clements. Thank you.
Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Alderman from the 18th, you recognized on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the January 11th minutes.
Moved by Alderman from the 18th, seconded by Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in Alderman's mailboxes. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Waterman Lake Special Business District. The reappointment of Mr. George Hitt, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Larry Wilson, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval of the reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from 28th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Waterman Lake Special Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request approval of the mayor's appointments to the Waterman Lake Special Business District.
Moved by Alderman from 28th, seconded by Alderman from the 6th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Carondelet Commons Community Improvement District. The reappointment of Mr. Pete Orman, whose property is located in the 11th Ward, whose term will expire December 31st, 2022. The reappointment of Mr. Philip Holst, whose property is located in the 11th Ward, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2022. I respectfully request your approval and the reappointments. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 11th, you recognize on mayor's appointment to the Carondelet Commons Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I request that Mr. Arman and Mr. Halsey be reappointed to the Carondelet Commons Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 11th, seconded by Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the St. Louis Housing Authority Commission. The appointment of Ms. Anita Booth, who resides in the 27th Ward and whose term will expire on July 20th, 2020. I respectfully request your approval of the appointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruzen, Mayor.
Alderman from the 27th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the St. Louis Housing Authority Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to support the mayor's recommendation for Anita Booth and ask that this be moved over to the HUS committee.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Please place the mayor's appointment to the St. Louis Housing Authority Commission in HUD's.
So noted.
Thank you.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Affordable Housing Commission. The reappointment of Ms. Danetta James, who resides in the 19th Ward and whose term will expire on June 30th, 2020. The reappointment of Ms. Gail Brown, who resides in the 18th Ward and whose term will expire on June 30th, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Leonard Jones, who resides in the 28th Ward and whose term will expire June 30th, 2021. The reappointment of Mr. Stephen Foch, who resides in the 7th Ward, whose term will expire June 30th, 2020. I respectfully request your approval of the reappointment. Sincerely, Lyda Cruz, Mayor.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Affordable Housing Commission.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would request to send the mayor's appointments to the HUD's committee.
All right. Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Please send the mayor's appointments to Affordable Housing Commission to the HUD's committee.
So noted.
Is that the extent?
That is the extent of report of city officials.
We dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We would dispense with line items 8 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 233, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Department of Human Services to accept funding in the amount of not to exceed $15,000 from the Oasis Institute and to enter into and execute agreements with the Oasis Institute in substantially the same form as Exhibit A and Exhibit B attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference for the purpose of providing 2 fall prevention programs for older adults, appropriating said funds and authorizing the Director of the Department of Human Services, upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, to expend such forms as permitted by the agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 234, sponsored by Alderman Ornowitz, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of the Department of Human Services to enter into and execute an agreement in substantially the same form as Exhibit A, attached hereto and incorporated herein by the reference with the Missouri Association of Area Agency on Aging for the purpose of providing certain home and community-based services in the amount not to exceed $17,000, appropriating said funds and authorizing the Director of the Department of Human Services, upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, to expend such funds as permitted by the agreement and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 235, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance amending Section 1 of Ordinance 67588 to exclude those blocks of North Kings Highway Boulevard between Delmore and Wells Avenue from the 18th Ward Liquor Control District. Board Bill 236, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service to conditionally vacate above surface and subsurface rights for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel in the section of Spring beginning approximately 445 feet of the Forest Park and continuing southwardly 30 feet to its terminus at Market Interstate 64 in the city. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Health and Human Services Committee, Board Bill 233 and 234. To the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 235. To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 236. That is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following bills were reported out of the Streets Committee. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance repealing Section 1 of Ordinance 63915, and in lieu thereof, enacting a new Section 1, authorizing and directing the Director of Streets to permanently close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Enright by blocking said flow 70 feet east of the curb line of Newstead and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Streets to permanently close, barricade, or otherwise impede the flow of traffic on Washington by blocking said flow at the west curb line of Newstead and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 224, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance establishing a dig once policy governing where, when, and how often construction excavation can disrupt, access the right-of-way, including the flow of traffic and pedestrian traffic may occur. Board Bill 225, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg, an ordinance adding a new chapter under Title 25, the building code, to be known as small wireless facilities and micro wireless facilities, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 227, sponsored by Alderman Oldenburg, an ordinance relating to the undergrounding requirements set forth in Chapter 23.42 of the revised code, repealing Section 23.42.010, 23.42.030 through 23.42.050 and 23.42.070 of the revised code, expanding the scope and applicability of the underground district. Board Bill 230, sponsored by Alderman Moore, pursuant to Ordinance 68937, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Miss Norma Jean Bell Way, which shall begin at the intersection of Lexington and North Newstead and run west on Lexington to the intersection of Lexington and Clarence. The following board bills were reported out of the Neighborhood Development Committee. Board Bill 78, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2615 Billups. Board Bill 97, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4338, 4341, 4345 Evans. Board Bill 186, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for the 3861 St. Louis Avenue. Board Bill 187, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4965 through 4975 Dr. Martin Luther King. Board Bill 199, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3,000 Locusts. Board Bill 205, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 1929 Edwards and 5210 Daggett. Board Bill 206, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5126 Daggett and 5135 Daggett. Board Bill 208, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2647 through 2653 Locust. Board Bill 209, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3535 Michigan. Board Bill 210, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4325 through 4333 Swan. Board Bill 211, sponsored by Alderman Gunther, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2821 through 2823 Iowa. Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5726 Reber. Board Bill 220, sponsored by President Reed, an ordinance approving a blighting study and redevelopment plan dated December 18, 2018 for the 5467 through 5559 Delmore redevelopment plan. Board Bill 221, as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 5539 through 5551 Pershing. The following bill was reported out of HUD's committee. Board Bill 188, as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Green, and Alderwoman Rice, an ordinance designated portions of the Tower Grove East neighborhood as a local historic district under the provisions of Title 24 of the Code, a complete description of the boundaries of the district more fully described in the body of this ordinance, and providing for a development plan including design standards to be applied within the district and containing a severability clause. The following bills were reported out of Ways and Means. Board Bill 175, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Kotar, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and comptroller to enter into a lease agreement with the Front Page Lofts LLC to lease property located in City Block 516 for a period of 10 years and for the purposes of conducting operations of the City of St. Louis Board of Election Commissioners and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 200, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance repealing paragraph F of Section 2 of Ordinance 63780, approved on May 31st, 1996, as amended in Ordinance 64550, approved January the 15th, 1999, and Ordinance 68236, approved January the 16th, 2009, and in lieu thereof, a new paragraph F is enacted, extending the period of time during which the Central West End Southeast Special District shall be permitted to collect a tax within the boundaries of the district and increasing the amount of such tax to an amount not to exceed 85 cents per 100 of assessed valuation of all real property within such district, and to amend and restate the use of which the additional revenue produced by such tax may be put to, and containing effectiveness and emergency clause. Board Bill 201, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters residing in the Central West End Southeast Special District as established in ordinance number 63780, approved May 31st, 1996, amended in ordinance number 64550, approved January the 15th, 1999, and amended in ordinance number 68236, approved January the 16th, 2009, a proposal to extend the levy of tax on the real property located in said district for an additional 10 years and increasing the amount of such tax to an amount not to exceed 85 per $100 assessed valuation, submitting said proposal to the voters of said district at the general election on April 2nd, 2019, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 226, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, and ordinance amending ordinance number 64518, 67309, 68206, authorizing the execution of an escrow trust agreement by and between the city and UMB Bank, prescribing the form details of said escrow, authorizing the release of unnecessary funds from the Argyle Special Allocation Fund and other related actions, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 228, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, an ordinance approving the petition to amend the petition to establish the La Colina Community Improvement District, finding a public purpose for the petition to amend and the petition to establish the La Colina Community Improvement District, and containing an emergency clause and a severability clause. Board Bill 229, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance repealing Section 1 of Ordinance 48889, codified as Section 8.10.060 of the revised code pertaining to the payment and discount of a tax imposed on cigarette merchants, and enacting in lieu thereof a new Section 1 of Ordinance 48889. The following bills were reported out of the Legislation Committee. Board Bill 26, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance to revise Ordinance 70737, approved March 2nd, 2018, pertaining to enforcement of code violations related to building structures and premises in the city by amending Ordinance 70737, Section 1, subsection C, related to the procedures for the collection of administrative citation, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 136, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance defining recreation fire as an outdoor fire burning fuel other than rubbish, leaves, grass, paper, building materials, except for untreated dimensional lumber or logs larger than 4 inches diameter, where the fuel is not contained in an incinerator, outdoor fireplace, portable outdoor fireplace, barbecue grill, or barbecue pit, has a total fuel of no more than 30 inches in diameter and 18 inches in height, used for pleasure, religious, ceremonial, cooking, warmth, or similar purposes, and providing for the regulation of recreational fires, and containing an emergency clause. The following board bills were reported out of Public Safety. Board Bill 222, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the city to issue and sell its general obligation bonds in various series in an aggregated principal amount of not to exceed $40 million, of which no more than $6 million in aggregated principal amount shall be issued annually for the purpose of stabilizing within the city limits described in the city's Proposition NS ordinance, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 223, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance authorizing and directing the Circuit Attorney to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the United States Attorney's Office, Eastern District of Missouri, providing for cross-jurisdiction over crimes that take place in and around St. Louis, authorizing one or more qualifying St. Louis Assistant Circuit Attorneys to be assigned to the United States Attorney's Office, Eastern District of Missouri, as Special Assistant United States Attorneys to facilitate the investigation and prosecution of federal offenses including the possession or use of a firearm containing an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of Transportation and Commerce. Board Bill 104, Committee Sub as amended, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance enlarging the boundaries of Port Authority of the City of St. Louis Port District, subject to the approval of Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, and authorizing certain actions in connection therewith. That is the extent of second reading of board bills.
We will dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 185, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of McCausland and Bancroft, regulating all traffic traveling eastbound and westbound on Bancroft at McCausland, and regulating all traffic traveling northbound and southbound on McCausland at Bancroft, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 203, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance pertaining to the permit fees established pursuant to the city bike share policy established and authorized by the St. Louis City Ordinance 70710, establishing a micro-mobility fund and requiring the permit fees collected pursuant to city bike share policy to be deposited into the micro-mobility fund. Board Bill 204, sponsored by Alderman Odenberg, an ordinance amending Section 3 of Ordinance 70892 pertaining to the establishment of procedures and requirements for the co-location and deployment of small wireless facilities in the right-of-way and city property by adding a new subsection L to Section 3 of Ordinance 70892 to permit the city to require reasonable, technically feasible, non-discriminatory, and technological neutral design or concealment measures in a historic district and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 213, sponsored by Alderwoman Navarro, an ordinance pertaining to the parking within the Skinker-Fauquier Parking District, establishing the location and restriction for curb parking in the restricted parking zone within the Skinker-Fauquier Parking District, authorizing the placement of permit parking only signs within the district, and prohibiting parking within the district of any vehicle which does not display the authorized permit, containing definitions, a penalty clause, and an emergency clause. Board Bill 214, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance repealing number 70858 pertaining to the establishment of a two-way stop site at the intersection of Warney and Lexington, containing a three-way stop site at the intersection of Warney and Lexington, regulating all traffic traveling northbound, southbound on Warney at Lexington, and regulating all traffic traveling westbound on Lexington at Warney, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 9, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance to revise Ordinance 70736, approved March 2nd, 2018, pertaining to the collection of administrative citation fines assessed by the building commissioner, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 189, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approved and recommended by the Preservation Board and Planning Commission of the city pertaining to the Lafayette Square Historic District, amending Ordinance 69112, repealing and replacing certain standards for the Lafayette Square Historic District as set forth herein. Board Bill 96, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2200 through 2218 Washington. Board Bill 194, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for Cottage, North Taylor, Maffett, and Cora. Board Bill 202, sponsored by Alderman Cone, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for Merrimack, South Compton, Bates, and South Grand. Board Bill 207, sponsored by Alderman Coulter, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 200 North 4th Street. Board Bill 190, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Board of Public Service, and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, establishing and authorizing a public works and improvement program at St. Louis Lambert International Airport consisting of capital improvement projects to and from the terminal complexes, airfield structures, and facilities, and associated airport structures, facilities, and environs, including the snow equipment and vehicles and other associated airport improvements. Board Bill 191, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission, the Comptroller, The Board of Estimate and Apportionment making certain findings with respect to the transfer of up to $13,727,769 of excess monies that the City of St. Louis, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, intends to transfer from the Debt Service Stabilization Fund to Airport Revenue Fund. Board Bill 193, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis. An ordinance recommended by the Airport Commission, the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and Comptroller to enter into and execute a second restated and amended lease agreement, Northern Track Site, between the city, the owner and operator of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, Binational Gateway Terminal, LLC, a limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of State of Missouri, granting to the leasee the right to occupy and use the leased premises consisting of approximately 61.10 acres and improvements thereon, commonly known as Northern Track Site, which is more fully described in Section 201, Exhibit A and Exhibit B of the lease agreement AL-094, in order to A, demolish any existing improvements that are not retained improvements, B, construct new improvements in order to accommodate international cargo enterprises and other air cargo operations and distribution facilities. C, develop and operate a fixed-base operator facility. D, perform all operations and functions that are incidental or necessary to such use and development or authorize the lease agreement AL-094, subject to and in accordance with provisions of the lease agreement AL-094, authorizing and directing the mayor, the comptroller, the register, and the city councilor, the director of airports, and other appropriate officers, agents, and employees of the city, and containing a severability clause and emergency clause. That is the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 19th, you have something prior to the motion?
I do, sir.
All right.
I'd like to ask for a privilege to make a motion to move Board Bills 1.
No, you're going to suspend the rules?
I want to
Yes,
suspend.
that'll be after.
Okay.
Alderman from the 18th, you
Mr.
recognize?
President. Yes, Mr. President.
You recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that we adopt the perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 170, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, President Reed, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderman Kotar, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Kennedy, and Alderman Muhammad. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Circuit Attorney to enter into a contract with the United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office of Justice Programs for funding to create a conviction integrity unit within the Office of the Circuit Attorney, and authorizing the Circuit Attorney to expend the contract grant funds necessary to support this effort, including the hiring of personnel and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 170. Board Bill 170.
Okay. Mr. President, I move for perfection of Board Bill 170.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, Board Bill 170 basically allows the Circuit Attorney's Office to enter a contract with the U.S. Department of Justice to fund and create the Conviction Integrity Unit within the Office of the Circuit Attorney's Office. So this is a funding authorization bill.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize the close.
Mr. President, I renew my motion.
It's been moved by Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by Alderman from the 25th, that we perfect Board Bill 170. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Gunther, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the city to issue its taxable industrial development revenue bonds, Series 2018, in a principal amount of not to exceed $75 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring certain equipment for an industrial development project, approving a plan for such project, authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute certain documents related thereto.
Alderman from the 9th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 177.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for perfection of Board Bill 177.
Moved by Alderman from the 9th, seconded by Alderman from the 24th. Please proceed, Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board Bill 177 allows for up to $75 million of taxable industrial development revenue bonds. These bonds will be brought into new production equipment for Anheuser-Busch breweries over the next 5 years. Anheuser-Busch Breweries, as we all know, is one of the largest employers in St. Louis. This ability will allow Anheuser-Busch to go from a large batch brewery into starting to make small craft beers that will not only retain up to 700 jobs in the city of St. Louis, but the tax abatement for it is 5 years at 75%. So the additional 25% that will be coming back to the city will bring in about $1.3 million of brand new revenue to the city of St. Louis, as well as keeping about a $74 million payroll for the city of St. Louis, of which currently we make about $1.1 million in earnings tax to the city. So there is a clause, I have a clawback provision in this bill to where if Anheuser-Busch goes under 700 jobs, then we are going to be clawing back 3% of this incentive for each job lost. And if they are going to go under 675 jobs, the abatement goes away completely. So we have some provisions in here to make sure that we retain jobs in the city of St. Louis that are paying earnings taxes, and we are bringing new equipment and new possibilities to Anheuser-Busch. So I would like to renew my motion sorry.
All right. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 17th.
President, I was hoping that the alderman from the 9th might yield for questions.
Alderman from the 9th will yield to questions. Alderman from the 17th.
Absolutely.
Alderman from the 17th, please proceed.
Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate that. The last time I had some questions about a tax abatement bill, our colleague from the 15th chose not to answer them, and it's always great to have that level of transparency to understand people's motives. You and I had some discussions, and as much as anything, I just want to great thing about filming these meetings is we can document things and we understand. You were fairly critical of tax abatement and those types of things. This is, I guess, a version of tax abatement or TIF. And I was just kind of curious what changed your mind. I saw here, since you've been down here, in the last year, 2017 through 2018, you sponsored, it looks like, 11 board bills. One of them was a stop sign. One of them was zoning, and then 9 of them were tax abatement bills. And this session, 18-19, you've sponsored 4 bills, and all of them are tax abatement, and that was it. So since you've been down here, you've sponsored 13 tax abatement bills, a stop sign, and a zoning. And I just want to understand, for all of us, for posterity's sake, so we have it on film here, what has been the thing that changed your mind, and why is it that this project is okay to provide incentives for?
It's a great question, Alderman from the 17th. So, yeah, absolutely. I am still critical of abatements and TIF. And I think that a lot of my colleagues here would agree that it is our job to make sure that we get the best deal for the city of St. Louis. So I would like to think that that's what I have been fighting for. This deal, again, it's it was brought about. It could have been a 10-year at 100% abatement. We had negotiations that allowed for 5 years at 75%. So, like I said, we are still bringing in an additional $1.3 million of new revenue to the city. Also putting in there the provision that the goal of this is to keep 600 union brewery jobs in the city of St. Louis, as well as an additional 100 salaried kind of administrative jobs, so 700 jobs. So, it's the goal to make sure that I can go to my constituents and say that yes, we are making changes, and I would like to say that over the last 2 years, you brought up those things, but over the last 2 years, I have been supportive of, because I did my own little research here, Board Bill 201, which that you supported for some TIF reform. I supported that. I voted for it. I feel that that was work that we needed to be done. With your leadership, you were able to get that passed, as well as Resolution 104, which not only went through your HUD's committee, but also went through the very fine Neighborhood Development Committee. And that was able, it was a resolution that I supported to say that we need to look at the way we are giving out abatements in the city of St. Louis. And I feel confident standing here saying that I think we have made some good changes. I hope that we still have some work to do, but I would think that you would agree that over the last 2 years we have made changes in the way that we approach abatements in the city of St. Louis.
I appreciate those comments. Some of that is what we've discussed offline, and now we have it documented. For the record here, this is, I believe, a piece of your campaign literature, and it said paid for by Dan Gunther. And it says, inclusive and transparent leadership, government should work for the people, be accountable, and listen to all voices. They have a variety of bullet points, which I won't, but one of them was fight corporate welfare. And the brewery is one of the largest corporate citizens of the area, and I think you built a pretty good case for that we're actually going to make money on this by keeping the jobs here, or at least keep the money that we're making. And I think you made a pretty good case that those jobs are actually going to employ a lot of people from our St. Louis area. And I think you built a pretty good case like that. I think there's been a lot of cases built similar to that historically down here, and it's very easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I would hope that you kind of appreciate the complexity and the difficulty. We had a bit of this discussion some months ago, and you laid out, I guess, your views of when or how we should use tax abatement. And quite frankly, it was different. We're all going to have different ideas, and we have to figure out a way to kind of bring all of those different ideas together in something that we can actually work with and go forward with. The other thing that you had said, which you did not bring up today, was that you were relying on the experts to help you formulate that. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree with that. This process to get to Board Bill 177 took around 6 months. From day one, my very first meeting with Anheuser-Busch, I took Professor Gerard from our own board with me. We've had not only SLDC, when it went through your HUD's committee, I'm sure you'll recall that the SLDC analysis that was done on it, this project received a 40 out of 40, a 5-star rating from SLDC. It is approved unanimously, not only by your HUD's committee, but it was also approved unanimously by the Board of E&A. Yes, I absolutely have relied on the help of the finance people to make this deal the best possible.
And the reason I bring that up is those finance people are the same people that are advising other aldermen for projects in their ward and providing that support. And I just want to make sure that I hear your public endorsement of that, because back in November 16, 2016, on your Facebook page, you said maybe TIF can shed some light on the real cost to STL. And I want to make sure that we all kind of agree who are the experts, because I think the folks over at SLDC are the experts. And if you think Team TIF is the experts, I got a few more questions to ask you. So I just want to know, are we going to be relying on Team TIF to go ahead and give us advice on which projects to support down here? Or are we going to be relying on our professional staff at SLDC to advise us on which projects we should use down?
Well, as you know, we work with SLDC to advise us on these projects. I appreciate you looking up a Facebook post from 2016, as well as pulling out my campaign literature. And if you went through that, you would say that, you know, being transparent, I feel like this is standing up in front saying, yes, I would not have been in favor of a 10 or 15 or 20-year 100% abatement on this project. It was the goal to make sure we keep jobs, we keep earnings tax, we keep this payroll in the city of St. Louis, and as such, I'm happy to be able to say that with the advice of SLDC, with the work of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, that we were able to get a bill that I feel comfortable as being the best deal for the city of St. Louis, keeping 700 jobs in the city of St. Louis, adding an additional $1.3 million of earnings tax, and keeping this payroll in the city of St. Louis. So
I don't dispute any of that. I supported this bill. Every opportunity I have, I plan on voting for it today. I just want to understand, for me, I like to operate understand the consistency on how people approach things, and it helps me understand where they're coming from. And I guess I'm going to repeat the question I just asked you. Going forward, who do you consider the expert? Are you going to be looking for Team TIF for your advice on which projects to support? Or are you going to be looking for SLDC for which projects you support? So let's say that the alderman from the 29th Ward comes down here and has a proposal that is endorsed by SLDC, but for whatever reason, you have a problem with that, and so does Team TIF. Are you going to be supporting SLDC, who gave you a thumbs up? Because Team TIF has a way of selectively reviewing projects, because I think some of us would view them as a quasi-political operation as opposed to a civic, a true civic organization.
Again, I will repeat that that being down here, when we take our bills, they go through SLDC. We take the recommendation of SLDC. But there are many bills, as you well know, there are bills that come through that might have a 2.5 stars or 3 stars. There are bills that come through that that maybe we should be asking questions about, tax abatement bills, TIF bills. And I have no problem, saying that, it is our goal to work for what is best for the city of St. Louis. And if I'm sitting on a committee and I'm asking questions, I will also, look through here that of all the bills that I see that have gone through, again, this Board Bill 201, which was the TIF reform, I think that there were discussions with groups such as Team TIF as to how we look at things a little bit different and how we make the process work better. And I do think that on the board, the resolution 104, which again, I support it, through your leadership, it was able to go through, but I would hope that you would agree that 2 years ago, the process was different than it is now. 2 years ago, it was if a alderman said, yes, I want this done, it typically got done. Now we have a map that has 8 different points from anywhere that include data that can support a project. And so I think that in 2 years, yes, there has been work done that has made the process a little bit better. And that process being better has come through SLDC at the request of the Board of Aldermen saying we want things done a little differently. So I think that,
let me, if I could, I've been kind of involved in this. I actually started this before Team TIF was ever around. Here's kind of part of my concern, Alderman, is when you try to make things better, sometimes you have to understand what's wrong with them. So starting about 4 years ago, I started working on getting an economic development plan for the city, and part of that process was getting a real study done on how we're using incentives. And we did that study. It was introspective. The SLDC took their resources and said, we're going to go out and have a third party take a look at what we're doing. And they came and they had all kinds of dirty, things that we could do better. And that's how this whole process got started. And of course, in the process of doing that, everything that we exposed that we could do better, certain groups who are more interested in politics than policy lobbed onto those things, and they started making a big deal out of it, and it actually made the process of TIF reform more difficult. And when, as I'm asking these questions, you had mentioned, input and everything. I can tell you that Team TIF, I sponsored a lot of that, the resolution and stuff. Team TIF never spoke to me. They had plenty of opportunity to come down and actually tell me, what's going on. Since you've been down here, you have never once sat down with me and said, hey, I'd like to see such and such change this way. So what TIF reform has happened is largely happened as a result of SLDC and other people down who recognized that there was a problem and tried to work with it. Going forward, I guess I'm getting back to that question. Going forward, when we have a recommendation from SLDC, if they're the experts, I'm going to ask you for the third time, are you going to go ahead and you're going to trust their recommendation, or are you going to trust the recommendation of Team TIF?
Well, I believe I'm going to answer you for the third time, is that we trust SLDC. We listen to what their recommendations are. However, as the board that gets to ultimately vote on things, if SLDC makes a recommendation and we have questions or comments about it, I feel that we're welcome to do that. But for the third time, I will say, yes, I work with SLDC to come up with the best possible deal for our city. And I'm not sure if this is any more questions about Board Bill 177 or Team TIF here. I appreciate the dialogue, but I believe that Board Bill 177, which we are here talking about, is the best bill for the city of St. Louis. It's the best bill for the 9th Ward. Anheuser-Busch has been a great corporate leader in our city, and I again, would fully like everyone's support on passing Board Bill 177, which is what we're talking about here.
Okay. Oh, I guess I was looking for kind of a yes or no or them or us type of answer, but I guess I'm not going to get that. Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate it. I rise to support this project.
Thank you.
And I look forward to your support of other people's projects as they come down here going forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alderman from the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope someone has a mop, because this is a very messy bill. We are not talking about reform. We continue to give out tax abatement to corporate interests. It was just a Post-Dispatch article a few days ago, which I'm sure most of us seen. The St. Louis Public Schools has lost $31 million because of the tax abatement that we continuously hand out here at the Board of Aldermen. And these are not tax abatements in economically stressed neighborhoods. We are handing out tax abatement in the Central West End, South St. Louis, and in downtown. If you compare all the tax abatement bills that we've passed in the 2 years that I've been here, it's been less than 20 redevelopment plans, tax abatements that's been awarded in North St. Louis. Most of those in the 4th Ward and some in the 3rd. We keep passing out tax abatement. And Anheuser-Busch does not need tax abatement. They don't need these tax incentives. They have the money. Mr. President, can I ask the Alderman for the 9th Ward to yield for questioning?
Alderman from the 9th will yield the question to Alderman from 21st.
Absolutely.
Alderman from 21st, please proceed.
Alderman, I'm disgusted by this bill. And I want to know honestly, do you think this is a good idea for the city of St. Louis, or is this what SLDC told you? Because if you trust SLDC to have the best interests of the city of St. Louis in my community and your community, then that's a problem. Would you support this bill if Anheuser-Busch was not in your ward?
I absolutely would. Being as that it had the provisions in it which that I have negotiated to get in there. So again, things have changed in the brewery industry over the last few years. It used to be that Anheuser-Busch was locally owned. Every decision came out of St. Louis. The corporate headquarters were right here. In the last few years, Anheuser-Busch is now owned by InBev, a national conglomerate that makes different breweries compete against each other for investment. So we can sit here and say, like, okay, no, we're not going to support any sort of investment in Anheuser-Busch. Let them go ahead and fight against, they're actually fighting against 5 other breweries. They're fighting against, let's see here, I've got it right here. They have states such as, they're fighting against a brewery in Texas, a brewery in Colorado, a brewery in New York, that have all offered other incentives and that do not have a personal property tax. So we're going into this saying that if we want this investment in St. Louis and we want this investment to keep Anheuser-Busch Brewery here, and remember, this is $74 million a year payroll. This is $1.3 million of new revenue. This is $1.1 million of earning tax right now. If we want to compete and keep these jobs here, we have to be able to put a proposal together that is able to bring this money to St. Louis. So I would absolutely, if it were any other alderman in this building that put a proposal together that brought new revenue, that had a clawback provision in there to keep jobs right here in St. Louis, yeah, I would support it. I wrote down a record of a number of other ones that I have supported. So.
And ones you sponsored too. How many jobs does Anheuser-Busch currently have, and how many are city residents?
I don't exactly know, but I do know that there was an article that just came out, I guess today, that said the brewery employs roughly 3,300 workers. I have no idea how many of them are city residents. I know I do have a handful of people in my ward that work there.
A handful out of 3,300.
Well, that I know of. I don't know how many. I don't have that answer for you.
Do you think that we have incorporated tax reform down here?
I think we're working on it.
Do you think this bill is a step in that direction?
I do. I absolutely do.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to Board Bill 177. This is ridiculous. This is not tax reform. Again, we keep giving out tax abatements to people who don't need it, to corporations who don't need it. Alderman, me and you spoke numerous times about tax reform. I'm surprised that you would introduce some mess like this. I rise in opposition. I will not be supporting.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 9th, you recognize to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 9th, seconded by the Alderman from the 24th, that we perfect Board Bill 177. There's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed. I'm sorry, President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Boyd. 20 aye votes, 1 present. I'm sorry. 20, oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Alderman Cone. That is 21 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 present.
By the vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 7th and Alderman from the 9th, and perfected Board Bill 177.
Board Bill 215, 215, Committee Sub, sponsored by Alderman Kotar, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters of the city a gross receipt tax to be imposed on telecommunication and fiber network providers as set forth herein, providing for an election to be held therefore and the manner of voting thereat, and upon passage of said ballot measure, an amendment to the City Ordinance 67717 is codified in Section 23.34.020 of the Revised Code of the City and Sections 23.34.010 through 23.34.030 of the Revised Code, reflecting gross receipts tax to be imposed as approved by the voters, establishing a telecommunication gross receipt tax fund and requiring the gross receipt tax collected pursuant to sections 23.34.010 through 23.34.030 of the Revised Code to be deposited into the telecommunications gross receipts tax fund to be appropriated and expended to further smart city initiatives in the city.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill 215, Committee Substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to perfect Board Bill 215, Committee
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on the motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I also have a floor substitute for this bill, and I'd move, a copy of which has been provided on everyone's desk, and I'd move to introduce the floor substitute to Board Bill 215, Committee Substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 6th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So the floor substitute that's in front of you today, it makes a couple minor tweaks to some definitions that the telecommunication community and some providers had asked for. What we're trying to do here today, this is part of our Smart City Initiative. That's something that Dr. Gaskell Clemens and many others have been working on. It's something that I've been working on personally for about 2 years. A few years back, we put out a request for information to internet service providers across the country, asking, what would you like to see? What would make the St. Louis market more attractive for your company? What do you need to come here to provide us more internet options in the St. Louis area, and so we can expand fiber? Right now, the fiber footprint in the city, the city has its network that I think we're all familiar with that runs through major right-of-ways. But in terms of private networks and providing high-speed gigabit fiber service in neighborhoods, your options are either very limited or non-existent. So what we're hoping to do here is to entice companies to come into this marketplace so we can expand the internet options available to folks and also ultimately lower costs. So right now, if you were a company that would provide fiber networks in the St. Louis area, you'd look at our city laws and you'd find yourself subject to what's called a right-of-way fee. It's a $2.20 per linear foot fee. And that's an annual fee, and that's an upfront cost. And so network providers and folks who would potentially dig through the streets, put in fiber, look at that and say, that's cost prohibitive. We can't expand, we can't grow networks due to that cost. We are willing to pay taxes, and every company basically we talk to who doesn't already pay some other telecom tax said, we'd like to pay gross receipts tax like we do in every other city in America, basically. So what this bill seeks to do is simply ask the voters in the upcoming April election whether or not they wish to amend the existing 7.5% telecommunications gross receipts tax to include fiber network providers. It has to go to a vote because of Hancock provisions, because we're essentially expanding the scope of a tax. We're not really losing any existing general fund because there's very few fiber network providers that actually pay the city's right-of-way fee. There's about $100,000 worth of that money that currently flows into the general fund, which would more than be made up in year one under this 7.5% gross receipts tax. I think it's important to note that we're not seeking to double tax anyone. If you're an existing, customer of like AT&T or Charter, you already pay a tax. Anyone who looks at their bill every month sees that they pay some sort of franchise tax for their internet service. You'd continue paying that tax. This is not seeking to double tax the end consumer. All we're seeking to do is make a tax structure that's more competitive for fiber network providers so we can expand private networks north and south and provide more internet options into neighborhoods. I'm happy to answer questions about this. It's something we've been working on for a while. It's exciting to get this done. We still obviously have to have a vote on the issue. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Alderman from the 19th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I stand and rise to support this bill. There are a lot of other incentives that come along with this when you deal with fiber optic and having the opportunity for your city to be a smart city. When we're building homes, we need to build more efficient homes and have the opportunities to have these services available in any part of the city. We still have parts of the city of St. Louis where they can't get the optimum cable service, and that is ridiculous in 2019. We also know that most of our new companies, as they build now, they have to spend extra money to have the type of services that they want to operate with in their manufacturing companies. So again, this is another way for us to be a city that people want to invest in. And I keep talking about this revenue stream that we need. And if we don't get smarter and help educate people on all these needs that we have and then create them so that we can grow a more thriving city. And so to have nothing else but a simple thing like fiber optics holding us back is ridiculous in 2019. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 7th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I renew my motion to perfect Board Bill 215 floor substitute.
You need to make the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I guess we should motion. I move to perfect Board Bill 215 floor substitute.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 12th and the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries.
That is the extent of board bills for perfection.
Alderman from the 19th, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to ask for privilege to suspend the rules and move forward Board Bills 193, 190,
and 191.
191.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th that we suspend our rules for the purposes of moving Board Bills 190, 191, and 193 to the third reading consent calendar. Second. It's been seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. 190, 191, and 193. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we suspend our rules for the purposes of moving the aforementioned bills, Board Bill 190, 191, and 193, to the third reading and consent calendar. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Morton. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 23 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman, for the 19th, and place the aforementioned bills on the third reading consent calendar. Madam Clerk, please place Board Bills 190, 191, and 193 at the end of our third reading consent calendar.
So noted.
Third reading consent.
Board Bill 101, 160, 161, 190, 191, and 193.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 6th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Morton. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 22 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 18th, and third read and finally pass the aforementioned bills.
That's the extent of third reading consent calendar.
Third reading, report of engrossments.
We have none.
Report of enrollment.
101, I'm sorry, Board Bill 101, 161, 190, 191, and 193.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. Before we begin back with the agenda, received a note. We want to wish Carol Howard, the Alderwoman of the 14th, happy birthday. Happy birthday. She tried to slide by and not let us know, but your daughter ratted you out.
39.
Just another, yeah, that's right. That's right. Right. First reading resolutions.
Resolution 225, sponsored by Alderwoman Rice, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Spencer, and Alderwoman Navarro. A resolution calling for Congress to enact the Each Women Act and calling upon our elected officials to provide abortion care coverage in public and private insurance programs in Missouri.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the first reading resolution 225.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move that we send this resolution to the Health and Human Services Committee.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from 15th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please sign Resolution 225 to help.
So noted. Resolution 226, sponsored by Alderwoman Middlebrook. The Board of Aldermen recommend that the City of St. Louis Port Authority provide personal property tax abatement to PSC Metals, LLC.
Alderman from the 2nd, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 226.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolution 226 is the St. Louis Port Authority. Okay, I would like to ask for unanimous consent for Resolution 226.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderwoman.
Okay. The St. Louis Port Authority is authorized under Missouri law to issue industrial revenue bonds to promote development and encourage private investment within the Port District. The issuance of the bonds enables the Port Authority to facilitate partial property tax abatement for companies. Although not required by statute, SLDC has promised to obtain approval of the Board of Aldermen before requesting the Port Authority to provide tax abatement to any company. This resolution authorizes 75% personal property tax abatement for a 10-year period to PSC Metals, LLC, in exchange for the company's agreement to retain 50 jobs with a $60,000 average annual wage in the city. PSC Metals is one of the nation's largest recyclers of scrap metal. Among its facilities in the region are 3 in St. Louis, 3620 Hall Street, 3100 North Broadway, and 300 East Nagle, and 1 in Granite City. The company currently has 36 jobs at 3620 Hall Street, 19 at 3100 North Broadway, and 5 at 300 East Nagle. The company has acquired a large shredder, approximately $8,750,000 in Granite City, which it will move to 3620 Hall Street if the city provides partial personal property tax abatement. In that case, the company has promised to retain all the jobs within the city. If the company does not receive the tax abatement, 50 of the 60 jobs currently in St. Louis will relocate to Granite City. Again, the average annual wage for these jobs is $60,000. SLDC estimates that the loss of those jobs will result in lost earning payroll taxes of approximately $460,000 over the next 10 years and approximately $500,000 of real property taxes over the next 10 years. Even with the proposed tax abatement, SLDC estimates a net fiscal benefit to the city of $901,000 over 10 years. With that, Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent for Resolution 226.
Would you like to make a motion to adopt the resolution now?
Okay, I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 226.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd and the 13th. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 226. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 226, sponsored by Alderwoman Rice. A resolution.
227.
I'm sorry. Resolution 227, sponsored by Alderwoman Rice. A resolution calling upon elected officials to pass updates to the Missouri revised statutes to modernize problematic features of Missouri's HIV criminal laws in order to revise intent, recalibrate penalties proportional to harm done, remove criminalization of actions that pose no risk of transmission, and reduce stigma by eliminating HIV-specific language in our criminal codes.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 227.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to refer Resolution 227 to the Health and Human Services Committee.
You like to make a motion? It's been moved.
I make a motion to
Yeah,
send it.
been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, and it's seconded by the Alderman from 15. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Madam Clerk, please sign Resolution 227 to help.
So noted. Resolution 231, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro. The Board of Aldermen calls upon Missouri's elected federal officials to take affirmative steps and encourage their respective chambers, leaders, and the White House to come to the table in good faith to negotiate a prompt end to the partial government shutdown.
Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize on the first reading of Resolution 231.
I would ask for unanimous consent.
Hearing no objection, please proceed, Alderman.
So I don't think that, when this ends on Trump's desk, you can say, oh my God, Vaquero sent a resolution. But I do think that as a board, we have federal employees that live in the city, that we should at least let them know that the Board of Aldermen care about them. I would like to see this be in bank, but I'd also like to pass it today. Again, I don't know what good it does, but it does let our both Republican and Democrat officials, federal officials, know that the Board of Aldermen stand with these federal employees. They need to get back to work. And hopefully this will do something. I don't know, but we do need to make a statement. So if anybody wants to put their name on this, please do so.
Yeah. Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to make a motion, or 13th? Alderwoman from 13th, like to make a motion for them?
I'd like to make a move that we make this resolution in bank.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 13th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we amend Resolution 231 in bank. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 23rd, you're now recognized on the motion.
So I would like to pass this and make a motion that we adopt this resolution and send it on to the proper places.
All right, thanks. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of first reading of resolutions.
Second reading.
Resolution 221, sponsored by Alderwoman Negracia, encouraging disability inclusion.
Alderman from the 6th, you recognize on the second reading of Resolution 221.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt Resolution 221.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 6th and seconded by the Alderman from the 8th. Please proceed, Alderman.
This resolution was passed out of the Health and Human Services Committee and just commits the City of St. Louis and those of us at the Board of Aldermen who are interested in working on the issue to partner with stakeholder groups to ensure that we are moving inclusive employment for folks in the differing abilities community forward. I've been working with DD Resources and a number of advocacy groups to start a conversation about the fact that the federal landscape is really changing. Sub-minimum wage is no longer allowed at the federal level. A lot of states are moving towards more inclusive employment, and we've had a number of sheltered workshops in different cities completely closed down and have folks come into more inclusive working spaces. And so this just creates a commitment on the part of us here at the Board of Aldermen to working towards conversations to see how we can do things a little bit differently.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderman from the 8th, that we adopt the second reading of Resolution 221. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That is the extent of second reading of resolutions.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Tuesday, January the 29th, Streets, Traffic, and Refuse meeting, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Wednesday, January the 30th, HUD's meeting, 9 a.m. in the Kennedy Room. Health and Human Services is 10 a.m. in the Leisure Room. Thursday, January the 31st, Ways and Means, 9 a.m. in the Leisure Room. And Friday, February the 1st, is the full board meetings, 10 a.m. in the Chambers. It is the last meeting. We're breaking for spring break.
Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th?
Yes, Mr. President, I would like that the clerk add the, we have a presentation from SLDC on updates on the economic development plan, and that will be part of our HUD's meeting, so I believe that needs to be included in the calendar.
All right. Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. As you know, most of you know that I used to box in the ring. And in 1999, I was introduced to the Boxing Hall of Fame. Leroy Grant introduced me as a fighter that touched a lot of people, but not with his hands. I've been in a lot of fights, and I've been in a lot of fights since I've been down here. I've been knocked out. If you know anything about boxing, you get knocked down, but you don't get counted out until you get knocked out. If you get knocked down, they'll pick you up and rub your gloves off and make sure that you recover and that you're able to get back in the ring and fight again. I've been knocked down on several occasions, but I'm not knocked out. I received a lot of bad email about in 2014, I had a near fatal car accident, and I missed a lot of meetings. I received a lot of bad email about me missing a lot of meetings. I do have the worst record. My work record is worse than Gracia, and she came in behind me. Christy. But the reason why I'm saying this is that a lot of you, I got sick and couldn't make the meetings. So a lot of you, everybody in this room is going to get sick. But I'm recovering like my community. I'm recovering. I'm back in the fight. I didn't get knocked out. I just got knocked down. But I'm back in the fight. And I'm saying to all you guys that are making bad accusations about my absenteeism, I do have the worst record, but I am recovering like my community, and I thank you.
Oh, thank you for that all. All the way from the 19th.
You know, I got to back him up. Because you see, until you live life and you understand life, and you understand the tribulations of knowing and understanding love and hate, you see it's too much hate going on. Because let God's grace be for you forever. Because you don't know when your time is going to happen. You don't know when you walk out this door what's going to happen to you. You don't know whether you're going to wake up in the morning. But I tell you one thing, what I know about Samuel Moore over there. He worked from home the whole time. Nothing never stopped that had been started in his ward while he was sick. Not from the car accident or from his heart problems. He continued to work. You saw the bills coming through here and everything else because he is a fighter. A lot of you all in here don't have that kind of stamina. You really don't. Because you would lay down and say, oh, woe is me and I can't do nothing. But what I want you to know is you need to take a moment and step back. Because you know, Mr. President, I'm going to take a moment here, a personal privilege, because I got mad earlier, but I'm not going to walk around with this in my heart all day. I'm going to say it. I had a young alderman walk up to me when he got here in his first week. You don't know nothing. You don't even know what a bathroom is yet. And you're going to walk up to me and say, I just want you to know. I wanted to make sure you understood. I'm going to vote against everything you bring before us. You don't understand nothing yet. You don't even know what's before you. And you don't know what you will have to do to support your ward or your city. So don't get so cocky. Don't have all this confidence that I'm going to change the entire world. Because the world as it spins, it has many axles. And it has many parts to it that keeps it solid. We got the worst threat ever in the last 100 years in the White House right now. The man has taken this country and this world back 75 years, because I did my history. I went back and read to see when we had this much controversy going on so many different levels. And it's been 75 years. So we need to be fighting that, okay? And stay on a steady course to change this city and improve it. You don't have to like me. You don't have to love me. You don't have to speak to me. But I demand that you be responsible for the job that you have chosen to take in, that people voted you in to do, and stop with the antics. God bless you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Alderman. Before we move further, Alderwoman Davis, get your place to dais. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to reconsider the vote for Board Bill 191.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th that we reconsider the previous vote for Board Bill 191 because it still has some work to be done.
Yeah, I saw it.
Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 18th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice. Alderman Gunther. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz.
No.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderman Odenberg. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvy. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Navarro. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Vollmer. Alderwoman Martin. Alderman Ornowitz. Alderman Odenberg. Alderwoman Spencer. Alderman Muhammad. 19 aye votes.
By a vote, you sustain the motion, Alderwoman from the 19th. What would you like done now?
I'd like to put it on the informal calendar, please.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Please place Board Bill 191 on third reading informal calendar.
So noted.
Thank you.
I think. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting for Tuesday, 10 a.m. in the Kennedy Room.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Tuesday at 10 a.m.
So noted.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 27th.
We had an incident when Martin Luther King's celebration was, and we had a news reporter that made a remark in regards to Martin Luther King. And I put on everyone's desk a statement that I made, and it reads, "When will St. Louis stop excusing racism?" And so we as African Americans, and this time is critical because we're going into Black History Month, as African Americans, we are a forgiving race. We always forgive when people attack us. We always forgive when people target us. But we need to stop forgiving and start standing up against it, because racism is real. As the Alderwoman in the 19th said, look at Washington, D.C. It can get no more realer than that. And so I'm asking that the Alder people read the statement, and they support us to stop the racism. Because racism doesn't only happen to African Americans. It happens to women, it happens to Mexicans, it happens to Italians, it happens to gays, it happens to all races and colors of people. And so it has no color boundary when it's racism included, but people need to understand the conversation that he had on the TV that day. Apparently, that's the conversation that happens on that station on a regular basis, because he was very comfortable about what he said. So that's my statement to the board. Thank you, Mr.
Well, thank you, Alderwoman. Appreciate it. Any further announcements? Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the alderman from the 10th, 16th, and 20th be excused for necessary action.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Alderman from the 18th, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move that the board adjourns until Friday, February 1st, 10 a.m.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Stand adjourned.